So, Excellencies, distinguished guests, President Joensen, Your Excellency, Ambassador Karabaranga, Prosecutor Jallo, Vice President Aegis, distinguished representative of the Dutch government, Mr. Joensen, Deputy Registrar Mackintosh, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all to this event today as we commemorate the 20th anniversary of the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. My name is Roman Bode. I'm the Chief of the ICTR Appeals Chamber Support Section here in The Hague, and I will be the Master of Ceremonies for this event. Before we begin with remarks from our honored guests, kindly join us in observing a minute of silence in memory of the victims of the 1994 genocide in Rwanda. Thank you. Now please join me in welcoming our first speaker, the President of the Tribunal, Judge Vagn Joensen, who will give brief welcome remarks.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, Your Excellency Ambassador Karabaranga, Prosecutor Jallo, Vice President Aegis, Mr. Sander Jensen, distinguished representative of the Government of the Netherlands, Deputy Registrar Mackintosh, esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. It's a distinct honor and privilege to welcome you all in this event commemorating the 20th anniversary of the establishment of the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, the ICTR. And thank you, Master of Ceremonies, for leading us in the moment of silence in memory of the victims of the genocide. It is, as always, a great honor to stand before you as President of the ICTR, and today it's my special privilege to welcome you to this brief commemoration of the achievements and evolution of the Tribunal. As we look back in time and on the past 20 years, we can be proud of the work accomplished and of the journey that was undertaken by all who have been a part of the ICTR's work. Whether based in Arusha, The Hague, or Kigali, together we form the ICTR family. It is particularly fitting to us to reflect on the legacy of the Tribunal here in The Hague, as the Appeals Chamber has played an undeniably important role in the work of the ICTR. 20 years ago, the people of the world were shocked to discover the amplitude of what had happened in Rwanda. More than 800,000 human beings were systematically slaughtered in a period of 100 days during the 1994 genocide that targeted the Tutsi in Rwanda, during which Hutu, Twas, and others who stood in opposition to the genocidal campaign were also killed. In a country divided and hurt following the aftermath of these atrocities, the Rwandan justice system was in no position to tackle the challenge ahead. A mere 4 months after the genocide, the UN Security Council responded to Rwanda's call for international justice by creating the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. Stressing the need for international cooperation to strengthen the courts and judicial system of Rwanda, the ICTR became the first instrument with which Rwanda and the international community would try to bring justice to the victims and survivors of the genocide, and as such, contribute to the process of reconstructing the devastated country. As the ICTR embarked on a journey that held many challenges, the eyes of the world were turned towards Arusha and The Hague, where international tribunals were taking shape. The ICTR, along with the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, the ICTY, were the first of their kind and set an example for international intervention in post-conflict justice at the turn of the 21st century. The challenges were great, but the tribunals have been proven themselves up to the task. The judgment of the ICTR and ICTY clearly illustrate the importance given to individual responsibility and accountability. The tribunals have also had an important impact on the evolution of international criminal law and humanitarian law. The ICTR had to interpret for the first time the definition of genocide as set forth in the 1948 Convention. Furthermore, it was also the first international tribunal to define the crime of rape in international criminal law, and it recognized rape as a means of perpetrating genocide and significantly expanded the law with respect to sexual violence crimes. However, one cannot refer to the landmarks and achievements of the tribunal without referring to the people who worked tirelessly to bring justice to the victims of the genocide. You, the staff, judges, and interns who worked hard day after day to make this happen, are part of this legacy, and we can be proud of the work we have achieved 20 years after the establishment of the tribunal. It is now our duty to make sure that the legacy of the ICTR will survive and that lessons learned will be shared. We long ago embarked on this process during outreach programs and collaboration with national jurisdictions in capacity building projects. And earlier this year, the first in what will be a series of workshops in The Hague on developed practices of international tribunals brought together legal officers from international tribunals and courts to share lessons learned. As the tribunal commemorated the 20th anniversary earlier in November, the prosecutor held the 7th colloquium of international prosecutors, and the ICTR held a legacy symposium. Both events brought together experts in the fields of international justice, national judicial representatives from across the world, civil society members, and academics to reflect on the contributions made by the tribunal. Although the ICTR is about to reach the end of its journey, it is important to never forget that the search for justice will continue after the closure of the ICTR through the Mechanism for International Criminal Tribunals, the MICT, which will continue the tremendous efforts that the United Nations began 20 years ago. As time goes by, it becomes even more important to share the experience with the public to ensure that the genocide and the activities of the tribunal are never forgotten. The ICTR is determined to ensure its legacy is rendered accessible for the general public and has worked closely with the ICTY and MICT to develop a new website that will do just that, which will officially be unveiled to the Hague community today. I will leave it to our Master of Ceremonies to have the honor of telling you more about the website at the conclusion of today's program. While the website will have many audiences, there can be none more important than the people of Rwanda. And the tribunal and the mechanism can have no stronger ally in the battle against impunity for perpetrators of the genocide than the Rwandan government. It is therefore my great privilege to introduce our first honored guest, His Excellency Jean-Pierre Karabaranga, Rwandan Ambassador to the Netherlands. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Judge Joensen, representatives of the Dutch government, Prosecutor Hassan Jallo, Judge Carmel, John Hawking, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. Goedemorgen, or good morning for those who do not understand the Dutch. I'm happy to be here this morning on the occasion of the 20th anniversary of the ICTR and the launch of the website of the organization. And of course, I would like to thank Mr. President for inviting me to join you to this important event. Of course, I cannot talk about the ICTR anniversary without recalling that 20 years ago, the genocide against the Tutsi happened in Rwanda. And more than 1 million Tutsi and those assimilated to them were murdered in just 100 days, or 10,000 every day. It was the darkest chapter in the Rwandan history. It was the fastest killings known in the history of the 20th century. During these 100 days, innocent lives were destroyed. Smiles of babies, dreams of young men and women, the wisdom of the elders, the talent and skills of normal Rwandans were nullified. The very who survived the genocide against the Tutsi were, and some of them actually still, traumatized. Many were disabled, and a large number were left with psychological and physical wounds. So there are no words to describe what the victims of and the survivors of genocide endured during those 100 days. Fortunately, in July 1994, Rwandans themselves, led by the RPF, stopped the genocide, liberated the country, and restored hope for the few genocide survivors who had lost almost everything they had, all that it meant for them, for a human being. This year, we commemorate 20th anniversary of the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. And we wanted to honor the memory of those who perished and offer comfort to those who survived. And I would like to thank the ICTR for joining Rwandans and survivors during the celebration or the commemoration of the 20th anniversary of the genocide against the Tutsi back in April this year. All along this year, we invited the world to support Kwibuka 20, Kwibuka, which means remember in Rwandan language, and the fight against the genocide. Memory is informed by knowledge, and we ask that people take time to learn about the historical causes and consequences of the genocide. Telling the truth about what happened is key to understanding the event of 1994 and ensuring that it never happens again in Rwanda and elsewhere in the world. This was partly the role of the ICTR to bring to light the truth, which is part of a remedy for the traumatized survivors. Today's event is part of this process, as the ICTR played an important role in telling the truth to the international community, which was absent in Rwanda during this dark period of our history. Ladies and gentlemen, as President said, in response to the call made by the government of Rwanda, the United Nations Security Council set up the ICTR 20 years ago with a clear mandate to prosecute those responsible for the genocide against the Tutsi. The Rwandan government, the survivors of the genocide, and all friends of peace and justice welcomed the establishment of the ICTR 20 years ago. At that time, Rwanda as a country was completely destroyed. I remember we were still busy with the country's reconstruction, rehabilitation, the organization to have a functioning state. We were still busy facing many emerging situations related to the consequences of the genocide. Everything was to be done and rebuilt. Our judicial system was not an exception and needed to be restarted afresh. The threat for justice was overwhelming, and expectations from ICTR was of paramount importance. Today, 20 years later, as the ICTR commemorates its anniversary and is concluding its work, it's the right moment to look back and assess what has been done so far. Observers recognize a number of really good achievements, but also we recognize that and we raise quite a number of concerns and some frustrations. On our side, we acknowledge and appreciate some tasks performed by the ICTR. For example, the resolution recognizing that a genocide happened in Rwanda against the Tutsi, thus slowing down, mitigating the aggressiveness and sadism of the genocide deniers. Trying and convincing some prominent figures of who committed genocide. The decision to transfer some genocide cases to Rwandan court, including those of indicted individuals still at large. This decision to transfer the cases to Rwanda is a result of legislative and judicial reforms undertaken by Rwanda to meet international fair trial standards. These include, among others, the abolition of the death penalty in 2007. The transfer of cases to Rwanda has inspired confidence in Rwanda's justice system. I would like for that to thank the prosecutor for his determination to see it through and the president for the tribunal's boldness in that regard. I also want to recognize that, or to recall that the ICTR became the first international tribunal to hold members of the media responsible for broadcasts intended to incite the public to commit a genocide. However, today we are not yet done. The struggle for justice continues. We are closely watching the evolution at the appeal chamber, where the judicial milestone we are celebrating today and we are congratulating you for seem to be under threat. On the other hand, serious critics and concerns are made and brought to public all along these 20 years after the genocide, and some are still relevant today. I'll cite very few. The establishment of the court outside Rwanda, where crimes were committed, constituted a great barrier to its mission to contribute more to reconciliation and national healing. For that, and from Rwanda, the ICTR was viewed as a foreign, detached, and contributed very little to national reconciliation process. Many fugitives are still at large, and nobody knows what will happen in the future for those who are still at large. For example, in this tribunal, the ICTY, if the ICTY can track down this mastermind of genocide that we know, if many countries can track down or people like Saddam Hussein or Osama bin Laden, then it is not understandable that a man like Félicien Kabuga can remain hidden up to now, 20 years ago. We cannot understand that. Some countries hosting suspects showed little political will to work with the ICTR without any regret and consequences for them up to now. And on our view, very few people were arrested and the time for trials took long. The rising number of acquitted people, especially in the appeal chamber, is also a big, big concern for us. Last but not least, the light sentences in the appeal chamber also is a big problem for the survivors of the genocide. Having said that, we need to respond to the question raised by the genocide survivors back in Rwanda. Did the ICTR really fulfill its mandate of providing justice to them and by the same way, preventing others from committing similar atrocity in the future? Will the MICT work better? On my side, I wish it will. Will the appeal chamber continue to work in the same spirit as it is doing today? Let me say that one day we should take stock of the lesson learned and assess whether we could have done better or otherwise. Dear judges, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, even though the Rwandan genocide survivors expressed those critical views, it was a way to show that they were not indifferent to the work of the ICTR. Nevertheless, for the remaining work to be done, Rwanda will fully work together with the MICT on securing the arrest, transfer, and prosecution of the remaining refugees and fugitives still wanted for the trial by the ICTR. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would be ungrateful for me not to mention how the Dutch government has been alongside the Rwandan government in the rebuilding of our judicial system since 1995. They provided funds, capacity building for judges, lawyers, sharing advices and expertise in the Ministry of Justice, looking for the well-being of inmates, facilitating the access of justice for poor people, and cooperation is still going on. The Netherlands has been among the few countries that have arrested and sentenced Rwandans involved in the genocide. As of today, some other cases are being brought before the Dutch court. Of course, we would like other European countries to follow the same example. Unfortunately, when we do such claims, it seems as if we're asking too much. To conclude, let me say that those still at large need to be tracked and brought to justice. The world should cooperate, and international community should support and assist the MICT in this endeavor. The international community needs to recognize that criminalizing denial and revision of the genocide against the Tutsi should be an obligation owed to the memory of those who perished in the genocide. The act of criminalizing the offenses is a powerful translation of never again from words to actions. The Rwandan people know, and indeed the international community, should understand that the archives of the ICTR belongs for the long-term custody to Rwanda. Until now, the government and people of Rwanda know that this is obvious and should be recognized. We shall also work together with MICT on the fate of course, the archives of the ICTR. For the website, I cannot say much because I have not yet seen it already, but I can imagine that it is very well done if I consider already the existing one. And I'm convinced that it will help the fight against the genocide and its ideology around the world. I continue to hope that one day the never again will become a reality. On this note, I thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now please welcome the prosecutor of the ICTR and MICT, Honorable Justice Hassan Boubacar Jallow.
Good morning, Mr. President of the ICTR, President of the ICTY, Your Excellency, the representative of the Dutch government, Honorable Ambassador of the Republic of Rwanda, Honorable Judges, the Registrar of the ICTY, distinguished colleagues. I'm pleased to join Judge Joensen of the ICTR in welcoming you to this ceremony here in Arusha today as part of a three-phase process of commemorating the 20th anniversary of the establishment of the ICTR. The Hague, of course, is a fitting place for that commemoration. The Hague and Arusha today are synonymous and symbolic of the process of international criminal justice. And if we were to name two capitals today in that process, we would name Arusha and The Hague and recognize the important roles that they have been playing in this respect. The first phase of the commemoration of the establishment of the tribunal, which was created to bring accountability and justice to perhaps the worst humanitarian tragedy of our times, started in Arusha, and as the President indicated, was marked by three events. There was the Legacy Conference, in which we tried to, in a preliminary way, together with international participants, start an assessment of the legacy of the tribunal. And then we also organized the 7th Colloquium of International Prosecutors, which brought together the prosecutors or their representatives from all the international tribunals, together with some national prosecutors from 20 countries, representatives from the regional courts, and also from civil society. Whilst the process of evaluation of legacy is maybe preliminary, I think it is safe to say that the ICTR has made its mark in a number of ways, some of which have been mentioned by President Joensen. We have been able to bring to account very senior people notorious for their involvement in the genocide of 1994, people whom it would have been very difficult, if not impossible, to bring to account without the intervention of international criminal justice. The court has been part of that process of expanding the body of international criminal law and also building up an acceptance, global acceptance of the need, the necessity, and the desirability of having international criminal process. The colloquium was based on the theme, the local prosecution of international crimes, challenges and prospects. And it was deliberately chosen because we felt we are now in a process of transition in international criminal justice as we are moving from primacy to complementarity. And with the devolution of this primary responsibility on states, it was important that national and international jurisdictions got together to assess the challenges that national or local jurisdictions face in this respect, the lessons that they can draw from the work of the tribunals over the past 2 decades, and how they themselves, acting alone or in collaboration with the rest of the international community, can address some of these challenges in order to give concrete reality to the principle of complementarity. We believe that unless this is done, unless local jurisdictions, and I say local because I mean this to include not just national systems, but also regional judicial systems, unless local systems are adequately empowered, we run the risk of creating a huge gap in the process of accountability, which may undermine our effort to ensure global justice. From here, we will go to New York, which may not be a judicial capital, but it is the political capital which has driven this process right from the beginning. And I think it is absolutely necessary that we pay recognition to its own role. In The Hague here, of course, we have many people to thank for what has happened, what the ICTR has been able to achieve in the past 2 decades. The ICTR is part of The Hague. We have judges based in The Hague here. We have staff based in The Hague here, from the chambers, from registry. And we have the ICTY as well, which has been a very close partner of the ICTR throughout its work. So holding this event here is also recognizing the contribution of all these parties to the process that has been going on in Arusha and Kigali over the past 2 decades. And we say thank you to all of them. Much has been done, as I said, but of course much remains to be done as well at the ICTR. And here 2 areas concern us primarily. One is the continuing failure to arrest the 9 fugitives who have been indicted by the ICTR and whose cases, 6 of whose cases have gone to Rwanda, and 3 are now under the jurisdiction of the mechanism. It is absolutely essential that these fugitives are arrested and brought to justice. But in addition to them also, we must remember that there are hundreds of others not indicted by the ICTR, but they are subject to international arrest warrants at the initiative of Rwanda, who also continue to inhabit other jurisdictions, and whose arrest and accountability is also extremely important. There is a legal responsibility on all states to comply with the international arrest warrants issued by the tribunal in respect of these 9. There is a legal responsibility on all states as well to either prosecute or extradite all other suspects, persons suspected to have participated in this particular horrific incident or event in 1994. It's an occasion, therefore, when we should recall the obligations of states, renew the call made by the Security Council to all states to comply with their duties to execute these warrants, and also to extradite or prosecute, as we said, those who are responsible or suspected to be responsible for the genocide of 1994. Unless and until that is done, of course, we cannot say that we have achieved a proper closure to the tragedy of 1994. I thank you very much for your presence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prosecutor. We are equally pleased to welcome now our next speaker, the Vice President of the ICTY, Judge Carmel Aegis.
Good morning, Excellencies, Ambassador Karabaranga, President Joensen, Mr. Joensen from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. I understand this is your first ever visit to the Tribunal, so a very warm welcome to you. Mr. Jallow, Ms. Mackintosh, my dear colleagues, members of the staff of both the ICTY and the ICTR, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to be here today and welcome you on the premises of the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia on this great occasion when we are celebrating the 20th anniversary of the establishment of our sister tribunal, the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, and also the launch of its new website. The ICTR and the ICTY share a great many things. I'll just mention a few. First, they share a common purpose of prosecuting those primarily responsible for the most horrific crimes committed in the respective territories under the mandates. Second, they share the appeals chamber, which is located here in the ICTY in The Hague. Third, and most importantly, they share the same commitment to uphold the rule of law and the highest standards of international human rights. As pioneering institutions of the modern-day international criminal justice, these two tribunals have paved the way for our other courts and tribunals which followed in their footsteps, chief amongst which is the International Criminal Court. Last year, the ICTY also celebrated the 20th anniversary of its establishment as the first international criminal tribunal of the modern age after the Second World War. It is important to remember that at the time when the United Nations Security Council established both tribunals, the ICTY in May 1993 and the ICTR in November 1994, many observers had doubts as to what these new tribunals could achieve and whether they would ever become credible institutions. To be sure, over the years, and especially in the beginning, the two tribunals faced a great many challenges. But I am proud to say, as an appeals chamber judge of both the ICTY and the ICTR, that they have achieved far more than many would have expected or did expect 2 decades ago. Indeed, many of the advancements made since 1993 in the world of international criminal justice were made possible thanks to the pioneering example and standards set by the ICTY and the ICTR. The ICTR is now in the process of completing its last remaining appeal, and it is soon expected to close its doors. In doing so, it is leaving behind an impressive legacy. As you have already heard today from my esteemed colleagues, the ICTR has demonstrated that it is possible to try even the most complex of cases, involving allegations of some of the worst international crimes, including genocide and crimes against humanity, and brought against the most senior officials, political and military, in Rwanda, thereby making an important step towards ending impunity once and for all. And of course, over the past 2 decades, the tribunal's judges have issued hundreds if not thousands, of rulings and decisions, creating a vast and rich body of substantive and procedural jurisprudence, which has been at the core of the ICTR's success. By accomplishing all this, the ICTR, like and together with the ICTY, has played an important role in paving the way for the establishment of other international courts and tribunals, and in strengthening the global system of international criminal justice. Our work and the work of others who came after us helped to introduce a breakthrough in our thinking about crimes that take place during armed conflict, one based on notions of individual accountability and protection of the most vulnerable individuals. This new thinking owes a great deal to what the ICTR has accomplished over the past 2 decades. The impending completion of ongoing trials and appeals at the ICTY and ICTR respectively does not, however, mean the end of the responsibilities of these 2 tribunals. It was in light of this remaining work that the Security Council decided to establish the mechanism for international criminal tribunals in December 2010, with the express mandate to assume responsibility for a number of functions of both the ICTY and the ICTR. These functions include, for example, supervision of sentences, continuous protection of witnesses, and the management of the tremendously rich archival material that the 2 tribunals will leave behind. The ICTR branch of the mechanism, based in Tanzania, assumed its functions in July 2012, and the ICTY branch, located on these very same premises, in July 2013. The creation of the mechanism reflects the international community's strong conviction that the closure of the ICTY and the ICTR should not open the door to impunity again for those who have yet to be brought to justice. The new ICTR website, which we are unveiling and launching here today, ultimately is to become part of the MICT's legacy website project that will present and promote the rich legacy of both the ICTY and the ICTR in one place. On behalf of the ICTY, I would like to thank you all again for joining us here today for this historic, important, and significant event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. The Netherlands has been the home of the ICTR's appeals chamber since the tribunal was created in 1994. The Netherlands has also served as the home of the ICTR sister tribunal, the ICTY, since 1993. The Hague is the home of many other international justice mechanisms, so many, in fact, that the name of the city has become synonymous with international justice. We are pleased to have with us today the head of the Host Nation Division of the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Sander Joensen, who is here today representing the Secretary General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who is unable to join us due to prior commitments. Please welcome Mr. Sander Joensen.
President Joensen, Ambassador Karabaranga, Prosecutor Jallo, Vice President Hague, Deputy Registrar, Mr. Mackintosh, Excellencies, distinguished guests. Indeed, it is my first time here because being a host nation is not only a great honor, but it's a lot of work as well. And therefore I don't get out much. So I'm here to tell you a little bit about what it means to be a host nation to a great many international organizations and embassies. We see it a little bit as a village of 20,000 persons, in which there are 107 embassies and 34 international organizations. We hand out about 6,000 diplomatic IDs each year, so we register you. We assist you where we can. We hold you responsible when it's necessary. Although, and I want to say this on record, the international community in the Netherlands is extremely well behaved. Even if the media won't print it, I will say it here, very, very well behaved. On your behalf, or to help with your work, we intervene with various Dutch agencies. We're the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We've been around the world, and we can see that Dutch agencies are good at procedures, but not always that flexible. So it needs some intervening every now and again. So the tax authorities, the police, social services sometimes. We work a lot with the municipality of The Hague, or Wassenaar, where many of you live, Schiphol Airport. We teach people from the Royal Marechaussee at Schiphol that indeed not the entire world is egalitarian, that there are differences. For the work of the special courts and the tribunals, we work together with the Ministry of Security and Justice, those who deal with the detention centers, the transport of detainees, the immigration service, the airports. I think, certainly with in mind what the speakers before me have said, we can safely say that the international courts and tribunals here in The Hague have in a way changed the world. I can also say that the community that has come to The Hague has changed this city in the sense that it is now even more international than it ever was. There are more and more international schools, and they're very full, all of them. For instance, sometimes we help out. For instance, now there are hospitals that know how to speak English and are even willing to help people during the evening, which wasn't normal and certainly isn't normal in the Dutch context. Going around The Hague, you hear much, much more English than ever before. And well, for one, of course, it should be a little French as well. I know that to be concentrated around the French baker here nearby. At Foreign Affairs, we take honor in serving your court and the many other courts and tribunals. And ICTR is a distinguished member of that select group. And that The Hague was to become what we call now the legal capital of the world, one can maybe see as logical. The ICJ was already here. But I certainly think that if you look at the last decades with ICTR and ICTY there, this is when The Hague, I think, became part of the subconscious of the world, and one can only hope that what I call the deliberate and inescapable grind of international justice will not only end impunity, but will make people think twice before they do something. I would like to end by, of course, congratulating ICTR on its on the anniversary of its establishment, but also with my background in mind to remind you of yet another anniversary that takes place on December 5th in the Netherlands every year. Who knows which one it is? And to tell you that if Sinterklaas comes to your door tonight, I hope he will be bountiful. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Joensen. And now to conclude the speakers at today's ceremony, we invite the Deputy Registrar of the ICTY, representing the Registrar of the institution that has hosted the ICTR's appeals chamber for the last 20 years, the ICTY, who is also the Registrar of the institution that will take over the residual functions when the ICTR closes. I'm pleased to introduce to you the representative of the Registrar of the ICTY and MICT, Deputy Registrar Kate Mackintosh.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, colleagues, friends. I arrived in Rwanda for the first time 19 years ago, in September 1995. The 100 days of murder that had claimed the lives of nearly 1 million people had ended just over a year before, and the ICTR had been established for only 10 months. The lush fertility of the beautiful Rwandan countryside was already reclaiming and disguising sites of battle and killing, and it was almost impossible, even then, for an outsider to grasp the scale of the horror that had taken place just the previous year. Yet to grasp that horror was the essential challenge for anyone who wished to help Rwanda and to help humanity in its post-genocide dawn. In 1995, I did not have the benefit of meticulously examined and established facts. I did not have the benefit of the accounts of nearly 3,000 witnesses tested and evaluated by a panel of international judges. We all accept how important it is for the human race to be confronted with such events from our history, to remember, to never forget. The painstaking work, the 20 years painstaking work of the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda in investigating, prosecuting and judging those crimes has ensured that they cannot be forgotten, rewritten or denied. They must be acknowledged. The ICTR has captured the stories and histories of what happened in those 3 dark and dreadful months and has ensured their rescue from fading memory and from the more sinister forces that would have them buried under the metaphorical moss or the tropical abundance as the world moves on. I would like to salute the courage of the witnesses, the dedication of the staff, the contribution of Defence Counsel, the leadership of the judges and principals of the ICTR as they approach the completion of their historic task. They have carved a lasting monument to the memory of hundreds of thousands of our fellow human beings. On behalf of the Registrar of the Mechanism for International Criminal Tribunals, who is not able to be with us today, let me say that it is an honour to be appointed custodian of these accounts, of the product of 20 years of industry and commitment. As the ICTR reaches its triumphant conclusion, the mechanism stands ready to treasure and preserve its legacy and to assist the prosecutor in the completion of his task. The registry of the residual mechanism appreciates the solemnity and the significance of this mandate. The gift that the ICTR has given to Rwanda and to the world is the gift not only of justice, but of truth. Thinking back to my own personal encounter with the aftermath of genocide 19 years ago, neither I nor my colleagues could have envisioned that the nascent institution that was the ICTR would grow to achieve all that it has, that international justice would, as a result of the work of the ICTR and its sister tribunal, be the fact of political life that it is today, that 93 of the most prominent suspects in the genocide that had just then occurred would be subject to the rule of law, that the stories of what happened in the Commune and on the Colline of Rwanda in 1994 would have been so methodically written. It is a cause for celebration for all of us that these things have come to pass. In conclusion, I thank you all for attending today. Thank you in particular to His Excellency Jean-Pierre Karabaranga, Ambassador of the Republic of Rwanda to the Netherlands, to Mr. Joensen, representative of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, to the prosecutor of the ICTR, the Honourable Hassan Boubacar Diallo, and of course to the ICTR President, Judge Joensen. It was a great personal honour for me to be part of the ceremony today and of the historic project of the ICTR. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Registrar Mackintosh. And now it is my pleasure to share with you the ICTR's new website. As it approaches completion, the ICTR was determined to ensure its legacy is made accessible. In other words, for justice to be seen for generations to come. Websites are universally accessible around the globe. By creating its legacy website, the Tribunal ensures its virtual face will be maintained in the long term for a variety of audiences. Special efforts were put into providing a user-friendly platform to provide a fresh look at the work of the Tribunal and easier access to key information. Research into selected documents from the cases and other key materials that shape the life of the ICTR has never been easier. Important features include a timeline of milestones in the ICTR's history and a presentation of key figures highlighting ICTR trial statistics. Importantly, the site was built with the mindset that it should be expandable. Work will continue. Case summaries will be included, videos of judgments, and a wealth of archival materials will be added. Multimedia features will be developed to further facilitate the understanding and ensure an accurate representation of the Tribunal's activities. As of today, all pages on the website are available in English, French, and Kinyarwanda. Increasing case documents available in Kinyarwanda has been a priority. For the first time, an extensive selection of indictments and judgments translated into Kinyarwanda is available online, therefore facilitating the work of legal practitioners working on genocide cases in the Rwandan local judiciaries. The website was created thanks to the support of the MICT web team, who developed a state-of-the-art, flexible platform that will expand over time to accommodate more archival and multimedia materials. Special thanks should also go to the MICT Registrar, John Hocking, for his long-term vision of introducing the Legacy Websites project, which will allow users to find information for the ICTY, ICTR, and MICT in similar user-friendly formats in one place. In maintaining the legacy websites of the ad hoc tribunals, the mechanism will allow for their unique work not to be forgotten, for the benefit of a variety of users, from victims' relatives to local judiciaries, from researchers to practitioners of international law, to name but a few. As part of the project of redesigning the ICTR's website and to help ensure at its 20th anniversary that a fitting brief overview of the Tribunal's work was accessible to all, the ICTR produced a video that serves as the cornerstone of the new ICTR website's homepage. It highlights the dramatic events that led to the creation of the Tribunal, and also reminds us of the challenges the court has overcome in its 20 years of existence. Most significantly, the video is a tribute to international criminal justice and a call for it to become a standard for all, everywhere. We are happy to report that as of today, this video is among the 10 most viewed videos on the official United Nations YouTube channel.
It came from the radio. At first, it was possible to ignore. But the sound would not go away. It only got louder. And louder. And louder. In the early hours of April the 7th, 1994, the call to kill got so loud it drowned out everything else. It swept across the country like a storm. For 100 bloody days, Rwanda experienced one of the worst atrocities in human history. And the international community stood by. Those that survived the genocide asked the United Nations to help rebuild a trust that had been lost, and through justice, put the country they remembered back together. The mandate was clear. The way forward was not. Hundreds of thousands of victims, tens of thousands in jail, but the courtrooms were empty, with rumors of only 5 judges and a handful of lawyers left alive. From its first makeshift courtroom, the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda went to work on a formidable task. Its mission: to locate, apprehend, and prosecute the architects of the genocide. Over the last 20 years, the tribunal delivered judgments that define, for the first time, how the world confronts acts of genocide in a court of law. It was the first time since the Nuremberg and Tokyo tribunals to convict a former head of government.
Je plaide coupable.
The first to convict for rape as a tool of genocide.
The chamber confirms the life sentence against Jean-Paul Akayesu.
And the first to convict members of the media for inciting genocide.
These broadcasts shock the collective conscience of mankind.
And beyond the courtroom, the tribunal's legacy is not just one of legal precedents, but also a record of legal reform in Rwanda, and outreach, education, legal training, and healing. Today in Rwanda, it's safe to listen to the radio again. The sound is of a nation rebuilding and a world pushing forward despite great imperfection. Each day closer to a time when international law offers justice to all people, everywhere.
This concludes our formal program. We now cordially invite all of you to join us for reception and refreshments. We would like to thank you all for joining us for this important commemoration event.